On today's episode of the SPMA Council podcast, we had on Alex Mohamed, a SPMA alumnus of 2017 and a current program specialist at JaysCare. This was an awesome episode. It was the first time this year that we've gone into the sport for development space. I know we did a feature on it last year with Emma Lambert of Motion Ball, but this is the first time that we've done so this year, and the episode did not disappoint. Alex talked about his SPMA experiences, notably as a volunteer for the baseball team and as a member of the intramural staff as a coordinator. He also talked about his experiences as a programmer of summer camp and sports specialist at the City of Brampton, where he spent a number of years doing. But the JaysCare stuff was simply unbelievable to hear, from learning how the programs are set up, the process to connect with the communities that are being impacted, and designing it based on their feedback, and just seeing how sport impacts people, especially. And he dives into a story where they went up into Canada's north in this remote fly-in community and brought baseball to them. And I tell you, you're really going to learn really how powerful sport is and what it can bring to people by just being there and playing the game. It is mind-blowing. It's such a great story, and I hope it'll give you a newfound appreciation for the power of sport and what it can mean when it's used in a positive manner. A special shout out to Alex Pence, who made his co-hosting debut as well. But this is a great episode, and I encourage you to tune into the whole thing. So without further ado, let's get moving on to the latest episode. Sit back, relax, because this is the SPMA Council podcast. How's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. I invite you to pull up a chair, sit back, and relax, and welcome you to yet another episode of the SPMA Council podcast. I hope you enjoyed our last episode with Yoel Haile of MOSC. I hope you had the chance to tune to that and learn about a bit of things about his role, his career path, and hopefully you guys took away some of his advice and pointers from the episode as well. And I hope that everyone's doing well mentally as well. January, early February isn't an easy month by any means. So just hoping everyone is healthy and doing okay. But moving on to the episode at hand, before we introduce our guest for the episode, we got a debuting co-host for today's edition. Not a big deal. Alex Pence, one of our SPMA Council first-year reps. Welcome to the show, buddy, with your hapless Detroit Lions hat. How's it going?
Good, man. I love how you always tend to target the Detroit Lions, but one day we'll win. It'll be the sweetest victory there'll ever be in sports.
100%. It'll probably be, if the Lions win the Super Bowl is kind of could be akin to like the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series. But you've got quite the enthusiastic and positive coach in Dan Campbell. I will give you that. He did get praise in our in one of our meme Mondays. So I do. So in all seriousness, I do respect the Lions fan base. Let's just say that you guys have been through a lot. I can obviously relate because I'm a Leafs fan, and we will not spend any more. We will not spend a second talking about those incidents. Moving on to more important matters. We had on Alex Mohamed on today's show. He's a program specialist at JaysCare. He spent time with a variety of organizations. Before that, he spent almost 7 years at the City of Brampton in their rec departments, doing things such as a summer camp programmer, and he was also at Brock as a recruitment specialist as well. Alex, what are your takeaways from this episode?
Yeah, I think one thing that he really stuck out to me as a first year, especially, is take all the opportunities you can. And there's mention in it about necessarily taking opportunities outside of sport and in sport in order to build who you are as a person. So I think it's a really useful kind of it's a very useful episode to get to understand that anything can be useful with your career.
100%, 100%. A lot of his experiences are very, very impactful. He talks a lot about getting exposed to a bunch of different demographics. First with the City of Brampton, but more so with JaysCare. There's a bunch of stories where he's had the opportunity to travel up north and impact all these communities. I won't spoil the story here, obviously, but those experiences were quite something to hear about on the show.
Yeah, because especially as for a lot of us at Brock, we're from the city, we're from the GTA. We grew up in cities that you are probably a half an hour drive from Toronto. We're not really versed in those places that are kind of isolated by themselves. And to hear the stories of how he impacted those places that are isolated, it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's like it's nuts. Like he's traveled as far as North Saskatchewan, where you're closer to the territories than you
Yeah.
are to the capital city. So again, we're not going to spoil the story, but certainly a story that you'll want to tune into throughout this episode. And another quick thing that I wanted to mention was it was him highlighting his time as an intramural staff as a staff member with Brock Intramurals, designing leagues and gaining a lot of transferable skills along the way. Really gave insight as to what goes into building an intramural league, and what skills you really need to hone in on in order to make it successful.
Yeah, especially as a student, you kind of just sign up for the intramurals, go play. We don't realize all the stuff that happens behind that. And again, to kind of build on that, he created opportunities and learning opportunities from his experience setting up these leagues that we all enjoy. So yeah, it was definitely a really interesting listen.
100%. Well, look at I think we've covered enough in this intro. So let's send over to Alex to the interview with Alex. But before we go, Alex, any final words before we head off?
Yeah, just make sure you guys listen through. It's greatly impactful. I think for all SPMA majors and even for people that aren't in SPMA, it's just the stories he's had is extremely impactful, and I hope you guys enjoy.
For sure. And with that, let's send it over to Alex Mohamed, Brock SPMA alumnus and a program specialist at JaysCare. Enjoy, folks. All right. On this episode of the SPMA Council podcast, we have a very, very exciting guest coming onto the show today. A SPMA graduate of 2017, his career spans a variety of organizations, such as the City of Brampton as a summer camp programmer and at Brock as a recruitment officer. In 2018, he joined his current organization, the Toronto Blue Jays, specifically in the JaysCare department, and has been there ever since, now serving as a program specialist at JaysCare. Please welcome to the show, SPMA alumnus, Alex Mohamed. Alex, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Will. I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. No problem. All right, let's get right to it. The de facto first word of the SPMA Council podcast. Alex, what mindset have you adopted to forge a successful career?
I think to be successful in my career thus far, I think you have to be open-minded and you have to be like open to change and like willing to just take things as they come. Of course, going through sport management, I think students like there's like a specific mindset. People want to work in sport, they want to be a part of sport organizations, but I think um, I just try to be open-minded. I try to take things as they come. Um, and no one opportunity you know how it's going to pan out, but I think if you look for things that you're interested in, and again, I think if you're open-minded to finding different opportunities, things will pan out and you'll be successful in your career.
Yeah, the open-minded stuff's a big thing, especially if you realize it early on. I mean, I think, looking back on it as a fourth year student, Jesus Christ, looking back as a fourth year student, having that open mindedness really helps, because people sometimes go into the program saying, "Oh, I want to do this. I want to do this very, very specific role," and that change. For all we know, that could change in the course of a year, 6 months, 3 months. And when you go into the program, it's crazy how many branches the sport industry has in terms of opportunities, especially and listeners tuning into this first, second years. You'll realize this when you take on some volunteer opportunities throughout the year. There's so many different paths you can take and so many niches you can find. It's it's an opportunity to discover your strengths and really what you're good at, despite what your presumptions may be about what you want to do as soon as you enter the program.
No, absolutely. I think that's very fair. I think like I think it was going back like first year or second year, I can't remember what it was, but when you start to think about the sport sectors, there's like not for profit, like professional sport, or like public sport.
Yep,
So actually,
you're bang on.
there I got it there, Professor
A
Chart.
little bit of 1P92 fundamentals for you.
That's it, Professor
go.
Chart during my time was who it was. But I had two other really close roommates who went through the program as well, and it's actually fun now when we look back at it. I work for JaysCare, so in the not for profit sector. One of my other colleagues works for the Blue Jays, so in the for-profit professional sport. And then the third buddy of ours is an athletic coordinator at a school. So three different sectors as we were going through, taking the same classes, living in the same house and things like that. But we all sort of found our branch. And I think exactly what you said there, William. It's you kind of have to just take with what comes, different opportunities, different connections that you have, and how those will sort of pan out. And there's no way to know exactly. You could say I want to be in a certain role for a certain organization, but along the way things are going to happen that might change that. You just got to kind of roll with it and see what happens as it goes.
Yeah, so it says here that you attended Brock from 2013 to 2017 and were fairly involved with Brock sports during your time here, notably on the intramural staff as a coordinator and a game day volunteer for the basketball team. Can you give students and viewers some insight into the processes towards running a university-wide league? And did that give you any transferable skills moving forward into future roles?
Yeah, I think for myself, obviously coming to the university in first year, like sport being a big part of my life growing up, playing it. When you come to university, there's only a certain number of ways you can still be involved in it. Of course, if you play on a varsity athletics team, then you can have that. But intramurals was like the next biggest thing. So my first year with my roommates and things like that, my people that lived in my residence with me would take part in intramurals, and the people that were there week to week planning and organizing, I found out very quickly that was an on-campus job. So I think like in whatever realm you're in or whatever program you're studying, people are going to say like network and do those things, but it can come in other aspects, right? That was an on-campus job that I worked. And I think a large part of that, like you said, I worked at the City of Brampton for like over 7 years. Every summer when I would go home running summer-based programs, you had to program, you had to create different weekly schedules, and then you had to facilitate whatever you were going to do for campers. And coming to Brock, working in Brock Sport and for intramurals, it was just a cool way to meet a whole another set of people. Like, you didn't just have sport management people, you had people who were studying rec and leisure, you had teachers education, comms, you had people from all different realms, all working this small on-campus team. And like every sport that's there, or every activity, all the classes and things like that, that was a part of the team that put it together. And I think it gives you the insight to that, right? Because those are jobs too within Brock Sport that maybe grads are looking for, but it just gives you perspective on such a small scale when it came to on-campus sport, like a 4-team league, for example, that plays Tuesday morning volleyball. The person that's got to create the schedule, the referees that you have to hire, and all the things going into paying the referees. You got to have the space set up. The people from the cage got to come set up the nets in the gym. You as a coordinator, convener, you got to show up to the league. It's got to be rules that are set out. There's got to be health and safety that's put in place. Everyone's got to have a student card. So like, that was such a small example of something on campus, but I think it just gives you such like real perspective to like what goes into planning a program like that. And I think like my time at Brock doing intramurals and through rec, like really gave me a lot of insight and a lot of skills, I think, that I use now in my role today. Because a lot of what I do as a program specialist at JaysCare is planning leagues like this and organizing big tournaments and things like that. So again, that was just an example of something on campus that was allowing me to make some money, meet new people, and then gain some really valuable experience.
And,
So,
and
sorry.
it's no, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask. So you kind of specifically you worked as like you kind of worked in sports while your time at Brock here. Do you think all kind of job experience, even outside of sports, would be useful in developing certain skills for what you're doing now with JaysCare?
Yeah, I think for sure. Like, I think Will at the start mentioned it, but after I graduated, I worked in recruitment at Brock. So I was going around to various Ontario high schools speaking about Brock University and the experience that I had. And like that role had nothing to do with sport, but it allowed me to work on like my people skills. I had to public speak every day. I had to communicate different information to so many different like audiences that were out there. And I think, sure, I was speaking about Brock every day, but like the skills that you'll learn in other areas, it doesn't have to be sports specifically, are gonna
100%.
be what sets you up for those roles, right? Every day now I'm coordinating and talking to community contacts or people that work in this realm. And I think it doesn't need to be sport, but I think if you can gain experience in a area that you think is interesting or you think you might want to pursue, and that's like a best of both worlds, right? You're going to gain those things, you're going to learn some things, and then hopefully you can apply them to whatever it is that comes next for you.
100%. Those roles, any role that gets you engaged is almost certainly going to provide a lot of skills for success. And you sort of alluded to it in your answer, working with the City of Brampton, where you spent you mentioned almost 7 years working in a variety of roles, such as a programmer of summer camp and sports specialist. Did those roles motivate you to purchase a niche centered around sport for development, similar to what you do at JaysCare?
Yeah, I think like obviously for myself being in high school, I think I was working that role even before I had applied to go to Brock to study sport management. But I think when you get, again, different experiences provide you different perspectives. So when I started working there, of course, working at the City of Brampton, you see youth who are coming to your programs from all different demographics, socioeconomic, whatever it might be, right? So there I had some insight there. You're working with youth that might have physical and cognitive disabilities. You're working with all different backgrounds. So that just gave me, I think, just some experiences when it came to that. But I knew, like, growing up, people say like, oh, you went to Brock and you studied sport management, that's what got you in your role. But I had like volunteered and coached at my high school. I coached like baseball teams growing up. My first role actually at JaysCare was as a part-time coach 2 days a week for like 6 hours for a program called Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities, or RBI. And that was a role that I didn't really know what it was going to be. I was commuting from Brampton to downtown Toronto to coach a team for like 2.5 hours each week.
And the
but
commute itself is not a is
the
not is
commute
not a
itself,
walk in the
like I was sitting on the train, building out practice plans, running to catch the train at the end of a game or whatever it was. But I didn't know where that experience was going to go or what it was going to bring me. But like those experiences are what lined me up for my role now. It not necessarily was maybe my education background, but rather the skills that I had, because I think as I start to immerse myself more in it, and now I'm looking to hire a team that'll work alongside or on the programs that I work on, you're looking at people's skills and experiences rather than maybe academically where they studied, because sometimes you might study one thing and all your experience comes from another, and that's what lines you up for a job, right? You have to go to school and study, and of course I use those things, but I think the experiences that you take away are a lot more valuable because it gives you real examples of what it is to be inside some of these roles.
Yeah, so your current tenure at JaysCare has lasted almost 4 years. And as you mentioned, you guys kind of work with, you look to empower girls, low-income youth, Indigenous youth, and youth with physical or cognitive disabilities. Can you speak to the impact of these initiatives and how they have had an impact on the groups that you participate with?
Yeah, so the two examples I guess I can speak to more specifically are when I first started, I was coaching that inner city baseball team. So you had kids living in maybe community housing units in Toronto that maybe don't have the access to sport. They don't have a parent or guardian that can drive them to a practice. They don't have the financial means to sign them up, but they don't have the equipment to play. And maybe they're newcomers to the country. Their parents don't know about baseball or know about sports and that sort of aspect. So getting a chance to coach and be a part of that, it was like the first time some of the kids around me had a jersey of their own or got to be a part of a school team or got to just be on a team, right? So that was a very empowering and cool experience for myself doing that. And then now more specifically, I work on the Indigenous programs that we run throughout the country. So we run community-based programs for various tribal councils or health authorities, but we're looking to promote like healthy, active lifestyles, but then also using baseball or softball as the tool to create like intergenerational change. So in some of the communities we work with, the gap between parents and maybe elders and the youth in communities wasn't there. So creating programs that have different twists to baseball that allow them to connect. So in one of the program partners that we have that I work with, they play games once a week with neighboring communities. So there's multiple communities that come together to play, just like in the GTA. You might have Brampton, Mississauga, to Burlington play. They're from different First Nations around the area, and we team up with the local health authority that works there to provide infrastructure, funding, and just our support that way. But then what happens at the games is we're trying to build on more than just baseball. We're trying to teach them life skills and things like that, build on the intergenerational piece. So in the first inning, for example, kids go out and they play. And then in the second inning, their parents and guardians or elders in the community, counselors, chiefs, they play in the second. And the third, the kids come back. The fourth, the parents come back. The fifth, the kids, and it swaps. And it's just a way to have parents stay around and watch their kids be a part of the program. And in the program itself, it doesn't matter about winning or losing, but we've created like a unique point system. So if you win the game, you get 1 point. But if you had a parent or guardian play, you get 3. If you had fans come out, you get 5. If you live stream the game, you get points. If you provide food for the opposing team coming in, you get food. So you get points that way. So the program not being based around skill level, but rather like how can you rally your community and get people behind it? And the impacts that I've seen, I've gotten to travel to a lot of Indigenous communities throughout the country, a lot being remote. Or flying communities or whatever it might be. But I think my perspectives growing up like in the GTA and having the opportunity to play sport and having a lot of the things that I do have and I'm privileged to have, going to some of these places and just seeing how much joy us being there is, like they'll think we're professional baseball players. I'm just like an average person off the street, or providing them with the equipment, or you like just taking an interest in their community and where they're from. It's been really eye-opening for myself, and I think That part of my job is the most rewarding. You get to speak to people for so long about the planning, but then before COVID, we were able to actually go to communities and see it happen. And I think when you see those initiatives like come together, and you like are there at an end of year tournament where all the communities are there, like, and parents and guardians and people are so proud of like their community and what the program stands for, that's where you see impacts that'll last forever for some of these kids and some of the partners that we have.
100%. And the saying "it's more than a game" applies here. Like
Mhm.
the score, although it's probably going to play a factor with the kids, it's almost meaningless when you consider the skills that are developed through through just showing up to the game.
For sure.
Like they're getting involved with the sport, they're developing physical literacy. The parents are learning as well, hands on.
Yeah.
There's I don't think there's many baseball leagues that say, okay, let's have the parents get a glove and take the field for an inning. That involves them more than just sitting and then just sitting on the bleachers for a few hours. And reminds me of a story back in when was this? This was winter of 2017, back in grade 12, where I was coaching, where my phys ed leadership class was assigned to coach a basketball team of this class called Team 10. And the group is that group is where, in baseball terms, you'd find those kids playing challenger baseball.
Mhm.
So so some of those kids had either physical disabilities or cognitive disabilities, like either they were like blind or deaf or whatnot, and we'd practice for them once a week in leading up to this big tournament. And it was all this management of skill levels. Some could potentially play in a real basketball league, no problem. Some were just struggling how to pass or shoot. And we go with this tournament, and I don't remember the record because the smiles on those kids' faces, they did not come off for, like, I'd say 5 or 6 hours. They were just proud to be wearing our school colors, our jerseys, and it really just opened your eyes to what sport really means beyond the stereotypes that we attach to it, which is win, loss, performance. Where the greater impact in some areas of the industry, is it requires you to look deeper and into the more the basic aspects, like skill development, that some people may not expect. And again, you allude to this in your last answer, as you've had stints as a RBI Reviving Baseball and Inner Cities coach, a program coordinator, and a current program specialist. It's easy to say that you've had a wide exposure to the wide scope of JaysCare initiatives that impact different communities and groups. What are the steps that go into effective program management, or is each process managing those programs unique, based on its type?
Yeah, I think the biggest parts, I guess, at JaysCare is that like we have a bigger brand, right? The Toronto Blue Jays being like Canada's baseball team, we have like a responsibility whenever we go or we do things, we're doing it to a high standard because we're all sort of under the same umbrella. So I think at JaysCare, I guess to start, like we're in a really unique spot because we're a not-for-profit organization, but we're under the scope of a professional sport team, right? So in our office, when we are there, right next to us is the ticketing department. So they're selling tickets for the Blue Jays, and we're on the other side traveling to different parts of the country running community-based programs. And I guess when you think about it in a way, if we go to a community and we run our program and give Jays hats and create fans, maybe they'll buy tickets one day, right? And that's how it sort of passes on. But I think when it comes to like effective program management, a lot of what we do at JaysCare is about like community input. So especially with my work in Indigenous communities, when we're designing these programs, like they will speak to us about some of the challenges that they're facing and the barriers in community. But when those ideas come out, we're probably sitting at a table or virtually on a screen and saying, okay, we've heard these things, but like, what are your thoughts? What should we do? You know the community best. We know baseball and softball and how we can use that as a tool, but all of you know your community, know your youth, and how you'll all interact, and that's what we depend on, and that's how we co-create these programs, because we're not going to go into any community or go into a space and say like, this is what we should do. We want to hear what they have and what the experts are saying, right? The people who live in those communities. And I think it's a lot about listening. You got to listen and provide people with support, because a lot of what we do is like ongoing support. So when issues come up, you're there and able to help, but you're also trying to problem solve and say, like reading articles and seeing like, what are other like effective organizations doing, what are they implementing in, and then using those things when we sort of sit down and are planning. But I think for myself and my role, you just have to be open-minded to people and their personal experiences and perspectives, because just because I think one certain way or have this idea that I think is going to go, someone else might have a different perspective or might get to that final answer in a different way, and we have to sort of navigate that system as we do it. And I think I've learned that a lot, because even at JaysCare, we have teams that work with such different populations of youth. They're all marginalized and they all are, let's say, facing a barrier to participating in sport, but the way each group goes about it is so different. And I think another thing to like, when you're working on programs and trying to launch them or create them, is that no two programs will ever be the same, because the people that are within them or the community members that support them, they all have different perspectives. They all are going through different things. They're from different areas. There's different climate. There's different political landscapes, and they just have different infrastructure. So I think for us, it's just, you got to just get as much information as you can to immerse yourself in it. And then when you start planning and doing those things, I can be the expert when it comes to baseball and softball and creating those things, but everything else, it comes from listening and just trying to tie all those back in together.
What's really cool about that strategy is, you're empowering those communities from the get-go. You approach them and it's like, we can, we have the baseball knowledge, but how can we design this program based on what you know from your youth population? Because the real experts are gonna be the people in the community who have experience seeing the progress of years and years of generations developing. So bet chances are, they'll know their strengths, they'll know their weaknesses, and it's great to use that information to develop a program tailored to those communities' needs, to ensure that the impact is going to be felt long term, which I imagine is priority number one with everything that you do.
No, for sure. We have community partners now that have started their program before I've been there. So I've been there for 4 years. We have one partner, I think, who's been a partner for maybe 5, almost close to 6 years. And the program is just embedded into their community. Like every year, it's like, when is JaysCare Rookie League coming back? Or you have kids who started in like the junior division and then have gone to the senior division and are coming back and they're coaching and giving back their time that way. In some of those communities, we'll provide like a league coordinator. So we'll provide funding so that somebody in their community starts to build capacity and starts to have the knowledge about running some of these programs. And those people become people who run youth-based programming all year round, not just for the summer programming. But yeah, you definitely see the impacts of it. And when you do when you do reporting at the end and you get to hear some feedback, and you hear from parents or guardians or even from kids themselves saying what the program did, it makes everything especially worth it at that point.
Yeah, so early in this podcast, you somewhat alluded to this, but what was one of the most rewarding things that you've experienced during your time with the Blue Jays and JaysCare? And to kind of add on top of that, do you have a specific moment or story that really sticks out that makes you happy with what you do?
Wow, that's a good question. I think for myself, like the most rewarding thing is you get like in my role now, I get to tie lots of pieces of my life together in one thing that I call work, right? They always say like, oh, if you find something you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life. I grew up playing baseball, so I know the impacts that baseball brought me and how many like close friends that it's brought me and the memories that it has behind there. Then being able to work with kids, that's always been something that I enjoyed, like doing it from when I was in grade 10 in high school all the way through university. Coming to university, you still get to be around sport, you get to plan leagues, you get to do these things working in rec. Um, and then you sort of move on to this role and you get to bring this together, right? Like as a kid growing up in the GTA, you go to the Rogers Center and you're like, whoa, how cool would it be if you're someone who works for this organization? And now as a staff, I'll go there and that's our office every day. And it's such like a cool and rewarding thing. But I think for myself, it's the opportunity that I have every day to just like create impacts. If I put the energy and time in it, um, and communicate the right way and just give people the energy that they need and the respect that they need wherever it is, the things that we can make happen are endless. It comes down to just how much we have to give, how much energy, right? We always talk about being burnt out. And I think sometimes you get so immersed in like the communities and the people that you're working with, and you want to give them everything you can, that you're not only burnt out like physically, but you're burnt out emotionally, right? Because
Oh,
when we used to
100%.
when we used to travel, you used to like you have to go there, right? And that takes a lot out of you, and you have to put on like a smile everywhere you go, and you're trying to create as many impacts or connections as you can while you're there. But I think a time that sticks out is like one of our partners is in Northern Saskatchewan, and it was a it was a health an education band that oversaw 6 communities in that area. So at the time when I was working on creating this partnership, the director of education basically came to us and said that there was mental health. There's a mental health crisis going on in their communities. Youth in the summers had not much to do or outside of school, and they were remote, so they needed an outlet for that. And we had already had that program in those Indigenous communities with the community-based program. So I got to sort of take that model, adjust it a little bit, but provide it there, give my energy, give my support. But I think the most rewarding thing was going there at the end of the summer, and you're talking to that person from like January of that year. I traveled to the community in January in the winter. You get to speak. I spoke at like a youth conference. You spoke there, talked about the program. Fast forward a couple months, I go back in June. I do like a coaches training. We do community visits. You go to every community. You go to all the schools. You get to meet all the kids. You say like, this summer a JaysCare program is coming to your community. If you want to be a part of it, this is how you sign up. Then the program launched in like July time, and then we go back in August, and we bring all the teams together for a tournament, and we try to bring all like the cool bells and whistles. We try to bring like banners. We had speakers and AV. We have food. The chief came that day and opened up the day with like we had an elder opening up the day with an opening prayer and ceremony. So like being able to say like I was just one person involved in that huge program that took place. When I got to go back, and you're like, I have photos of us standing there at like the opening ceremonies, and like seeing all the kids from 6 different communities there, their parents, their guardians in the stands, and you get to just be there and be a part of that and plan it and do those things. I'll remember that. That was like one of my first. That was like the first time I got to sort of see a program from start to finish, and I think for myself it was everything else that was in it, right? I visited there in the winter and then gone back, and then you get to go at the end. And I think it just times where it's lots going on, or you have your own personal life, or you have your other programs that you're working on, or there are times where other people on my team need help and you're trying to give it. And for that one partner that you have, you're their JaysCare contact, right? And I think when I got to sort of stand back and reflect on that, that was something I was really proud of. And now a couple years later, you're still trying to do the same things, and you have kids who had gone through the program, or people still talking about it, or asking when we're going to come back and run it. And I think for myself, that's been so rewarding. But that's, my job allows me to do such cool things that I think it's every day that we're there, we're trying to do something that's impactful and that can reach as many people as possible through the tools that we have here.
Man, that's one hell of a story.
That's amazing.
Talk about transforming a community in the span of a year, eh? Like, you know, you don't, we don't really realize how remote the country can get unless you travel there. And when you do, it's like, wait, we're closer to the territories than we are to the capital of this province.
Yep.
So, very often it's either fly in, and it's either like access a seasonal road to get there, access a plane to get there. And because of that, there's not much. So when these communities get to enjoy that not only empowers them through sport, but their culture is able to be connected with it as well. As you mentioned, the chief opened up that program for you. That must be such a thing to witness. And I imagine that motivates you to keep these programs going for those communities long term, because you see the impact that has. But look at Alex. This was an awesome episode. Awesome to shed light on JaysCare, what you do, and the sheer impact that the organization has on some communities. For the listeners in the episode, I encourage you to go to the JaysCare website, see what they do, see which communities they help out and empower. The impact cannot be stated enough as to what this organization does. But before we go, it is tradition around here at the SPMA Council podcast to have the guests say the last words, to say what's on their mind, anything that they've left out, or just an excuse to shoot the breeze a little while longer. So Alex, thanks so much, man, and the floor is yours.
No, I think for anyone who's listening to the podcast and thinking about Brock or a current student inside of it, I think all the people you'll probably hear from in the different perspectives that you have, those are their examples, right? Those are the things that they've lived and they've gone through. But I think like I was saying earlier, no two examples will be the same, right? No two people will walk the same path and get to the same place. And through the world now and everything that's going on, it might be difficult to find a job, or it might be difficult to find the avenue that you're trying to get into. But I always say it to students and like different young professionals and things like that. Like, I'm sort of in that same boat. I found a cool experience that came when it was right for me. I was ready to sort of jump into the professional world and work in that space, and it came to me. But I don't think, for some, it might take a little bit longer, but I think timing has to be right. And I think when opportunities and things are ready to happen, they'll happen. And a lot of the times, I know when I was a student, I was looking at my peers and saying like, oh, they got a job, am I doing something wrong? Or they're getting opportunities, am I doing something wrong? But I think, like, as you go through it, the way you network and the way you go about things, you have to be open-minded. You have to be open-minded to meeting people. You have to be open-minded to trying new things and learning new experiences. And I think if I can give you any advice, it's, if there's something that you think you might want to do in the future, there are probably people you can reach out to seek some advice from. But not everything has to be sort of in a straight line. You don't need to do this, then this, then this. It could come in all different ways. And I think the way that's unique and right for you is the way that you'll know. These are my experiences and what I've lived, but I think when timing is right and things are ready to happen, they'll happen. You just got to continue to move forward, continue to have a positive mindset, meet new people, try new things, and things will eventually work out one way or another. So that's what I'll leave you with.
And that's a great way to wrap it up. Thanks again, Alex.